Hey, everybody, it's Adnan Burke from ESPN, and you're listening to two of my favorites, Graham and Chris, out of left field right now.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Out of Left Field. Graham and Chris hanging out here with you again. We are, good Lord, man, we're pretty much out of the third base running lane and into the dirt circle towards home plate now with the season. We got 7 days left, and this baseball season, at least regular season, is going to be done. This has been one of those weeks where we don't have a ton of things to talk about, but a couple of things that we do have to discuss are pretty substantial in one way or another. Some really, really negatively, some obviously going to be hurtful for one, but just changes in the baseball landscape for others. Let's put the ball in play on the show, and let's go ahead and get to the biggest story, the most damning story, if you will, and that's going to be about Cubs shortstop Addison Russell being placed on administrative leave by Major League Baseball. Why? If you haven't heard, he is under investigation by Major League Baseball under the joint domestic violence policy. His ex-wife, if you do happen to recall, made some claims, I think a year or two ago, about physical, verbal, emotional abuse by Addison Russell. She didn't a friend of hers made the claims, and his ex-wife did not cooperate at the time, Melissa Reedy, as they were going through their divorce. But now she has released some detailed accounts of what happened, alleging physical, verbal, and emotional abuse quite extensively. This is pretty big, man. And not just for the Cubs themselves, but this is pretty damning stuff on a very young man.
Well, and it's career-ending type stuff. I mean, if this is in fact the case, if Addison Russell's been unable to go through his now failed marriage without putting his hands on his ex-wife, that's going to be the end of him, I think. I don't think anybody's going to pick him up. If he's tried and convicted on domestic violence charges, I don't think Major League Baseball is going to want him back anyway.
This is one of those moments where it's really hard to go ahead and discuss this, because we have to discuss it at the same time in the way that it relates to the game, right? I mean, we have to go beyond just the interpersonal, cavalcade of crap that is being dealt, with by his ex-wife, the way that she was treated, the way she alleges to have been treated, just to be fair to Addison Russell, but the way that she lays things out are extremely disconcerting, scary for her. She alleges that in the middle of being physically harmed by him, that he would threaten to have her and their infant child sent away because she was fortunate to be living in the home. The Cubs offered a statement. They said, quote, "We take allegations of domestic violence seriously and support the league's decision to place Addison Russell on administrative leave, given new details revealed today. We will continue to cooperate with the league's investigation so the appropriate action can be taken," close quote. Russell responded through the MLBPA saying, quote, "These allegations are completely false. I made that clear to Major League Baseball last year and reiterated it to the Cubs today. I'm confident any full and fair investigation will fully exonerate me. The protection of my child is foremost in my mind, so I will have no further comment," close quote. There are a lot of we've heard a lot of stories. We've heard a lot of stories and allegations where we have all kind of sat there and go, "Man, there's some holes in this." This seems pretty solid.
Yeah, there are a few holes in this. You know where I stand on this. I said it off the air. I'll say it on the air. I think Addison Russell's guilty of this. It's the way that these allegations have been reiterated and then substantiated
from two different people.
Right, and then substantiated by her personal accounts of what was going on. I mean, I'd like to give Addison Russell the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Russell doesn't believe that the things that were going on are abusive, right? This could be them looking at the same situation from a different viewpoint. But in reading the allegations and reading the things that that Russell's wife said about the allegations, in fact, she says, quote, being blamed for just about anything that went wrong, name calling, intimidating me with personal force, manipulating me to think I was the problem, destroying my personal things, threatening to, quote, send me and our son home to my parents as if I was privilegedly living in our home, as you said. Basically, I felt like I was nothing, a nobody. I was nothing without him, and I couldn't do anything without him, close quote. So those are the kind of things where some people from some walks of life or some, backgrounds might say, well, that's just a couple arguing. That's just fighting. That's not abusive. But those things are abusive. And especially you have to look at it from Russell being in a position of power because he is the multi-million-dollar athlete who, pays for.
And was on tap to be given an extremely high contract as his, or at least was arbitration eligible going the next year.
Right. Where he would have been well paid for his ability on the field. But, it could be, and to give him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he doesn't think those things are abusive. Maybe he just thinks that's how normal couples fight. But the problem is those things are abusive. And then if there was any physical abuse, obviously that's reprehensible.
So I have to ask to bring it back to
baseball.
The baseball diamond. I made this discussion, or this comment rather, the last show, and got a pretty sizable kind of balk from you, from quite a few people. Even my dad heard the show. He thought I was talking a little bit of negative stuff on Brandon Crawford, who, by the way, obviously he's a huge Brandon Crawford fan, which I know makes you quite happy. But at the same time here, I mentioned to you how I thought the move for Daniel Murphy was great. I thought it was a great move, and could Daniel Murphy end up supplanting Russell? They slide Baez over to short with a great range and great glove, and they leave Murphy, who is raked at Wrigley Field. They leave him as a big piece in that ball club. And you kind of look at me like, okay, dude, obviously there's a big age gap here. Why would they go for that? I'll ask you now, after all of this, am I onto something? Does it make a lot more sense now to have Daniel Murphy staying with this ball club?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on where this investigation goes, but like I said, you got to feel like this is going to take a while. And Daniel Murphy, with Addison Russell on the ball field, it makes no sense. But without Addison Russell, yes, it does. It makes all the sense in the world because Daniel Murphy is he's a good piece to fill in for the huge gap that Addison Russell is about to leave in this ball club. I hate to make things like this about baseball, but that's what this show is about.
Right. And to your point, the last big investigation into Roberto Osuna took 6 weeks. So it's possible we don't even hear the outcome of this while the baseball season, even the postseason, is still underway.
Right. And we might not. I mean, chances are we'll hear about this during probably just before winter meetings, to be honest. This is probably something they're going to take. They're going to take. Which could end
up being huge because if there is an issue here where, hey, this is what's going to happen, we don't really want him. Do the Cubs consider either an arbitration and a move? Do they make a move at the meeting saying we'll take him the chance, or is it going to be one of those moments where I think depending on what comes out, teams just wash their hands and go, not just no, hell no, as Joel Sergeant Murphy used to say to us all the time when we did something stupid, which was every day.
Well, every other day. We alternated days, I think.
We did. But yeah, I mean, this to me, it's just, this really leaves things, I think up in the air for his career, which, while it is something that we discuss and focus on the show, his career is nothing compared to the safety and needed for his ex-wife and everything else that she may have endured.
Yeah, and the end of his career is not the worst outcome. This is going to be, if these allegations are true, this is going to be an emotional roller coaster for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So, it sucks, but you put yourself in this position, and I really have trouble having any sympathy for you, to be honest.
Yeah, I understand. I think that's kind of the going consensus with that kind of thing. I mean, there's no reason behind that. Moving on, Victor Martinez, a guy who will obviously be in the Hall of Fame discussion in 5 years, has decided to retire, and he retires oddly enough to me this weekend. Doesn't go ahead and finish out the year. I don't know if there's something to do with an injury, or if there is some young kid they want to put in there. He's pretty much been DHing anyway for the majority of the last several years, but he concluded his playing career on Saturday. He had a final little dribble blooper up to first base, and as he reached first base, Ron Gardenhire promptly took him out and gave him the ovation that he deserved for the time that he has spent in Major League Baseball. And Victor Martinez bid the game farewell.
Right, and so Victor Martinez is the one who, it looks like, made the choice to make this his last game. He wanted his last game to be at Comerica, which is understandable. He's played there for
since 2011.
Right, for the majority of his career. And it makes sense for him to finish at home in front of a crowd that's supported him. I mean, we're talking about going back to earlier this decade when it was him and Prince Fielder and Miguel Cabrera. I mean, that was a difficult portion of the lineup for pitchers to get through.
Yep.
So, I think it's good that he's retiring on his terms. I think it's good that he got to have his final at bat in Detroit just like he wanted to, and that at bat resulted in a hit. And sometimes when you're done, you're done.
I mean, 39 years old, has played over 100 games, and almost I think aside from him missing the 2012 season, out of the 16 years that he played, only I'm going through here, only 3 times did he play in less than 100 games. That was his rookie year in 2002. He played in 12. The next year in Cleveland, he played in 49, and then with some injuries in Cleveland in 2008, played in 73. Aside from that, it's been 155, 127, 145, 159, 151. And a guy who played for a good chunk of his career was a catcher when he began. You don't expect to see 162 in there, but he was a guy you could count on in there night in, night out. And he walks away with, some pretty nice numbers across the board. A 295 career average, on base of 360, 455 slugging percentage, walked 730 times, struck out 891. A guy who was considered much more of a power hitter than he was, an on-base kind of guy. Those are really good numbers looking back at not nearly the numbers of some other guys, some of the crazy stats that we've seen, but 2,153 hits, 246 home runs, drove in 1,178. Man, he's a product of the time in baseball from 02 to 18 that some of those numbers, as a guy who never really I never really heard any of the steroid talk around it, the Hall might come and knock it. Not his first year,
no,
but I think we could see his name on a plaque in Cooperstown. I don't think it's too far fetched of a possibility.
Yeah, and even if that's not the case, which, like I said, I don't think you're wrong. I just think the big numbers that you look at for a guy like Victor Martinez are a little low. 246 home runs for a power hitter, not exactly what you're looking for, right? If he's not in the 400 or 500 club, you're probably gonna not look at him the first 5 or 6 times you see him. If he doesn't have 3,000 hits, you're probably not going to look at him the first 2 or 3 times you see him. But solid ball player, played a lot, played a ton, had over 1,000 hits in his 900 and something games in Detroit. Yeah, I mean, he's a solid baseball player, and you and I both know that our beliefs differ on who goes to the Hall and who doesn't. But I don't know that solid everyday ball player goes to the Hall of Fame, but he's definitely going to get a look.
Yeah, and I get that. I think that makes sense. If I told you a guy who, was a catcher, a DH for a little while, played first base, and as a catcher, mind you, had 142 errors and a 991 fielding percentage. Just off that, pretty good, right? Not too shabby. Granted, the career's a little bit longer, but I mean, when you're still behind the plate, and I mean we know how important that position can be, and you play almost 2,400 games behind the dish. I mean, that 991. That's not the shabbiest number, but at the same time, when you're back there and you're catching more like 1,000 games, and you make 42 errors, Victor Martinez wasn't the worst fielder in the world. A 993 career fielding percentage between being a catcher and a first baseman.
Right.
Made 53 career errors. You're right. He was kind of a ball player's ball player at the end of it. He was a big leader in that clubhouse, and a couple of clubhouses. We're starting to see those guys go, and it's going to be weird because before we really look at it, I mean, Martinez, man, he's kind of that old, kind of grizzled veteran that you think of, right?
Right.
But the problem is, the guy who's probably, aside from Yadier Molina, is probably the guy that kind of fills that void right now. Is a former catcher who's kind of being worked in a couple of different spots, still kind of has it. The scary thing to think about is it's going to make both of us feel older than we probably already do. That's the Buster Posey mold right now. He's been in long enough that he fills that spot, and we think Buster. I mean, because he obviously he looks babyface anyway. So we think, okay, he's still, early, or late 20s, maybe early 30s. And you go, no, Buster's been in the league for a minute.
Yeah, Buster's been in the league since 2010. This is his 8th season in Major League Baseball. And he does fit that sort of position. I mean, obviously, Posey's career has been a bit more illustrious.
Well, when you walk into 3 World Series winning teams in 5 years, I mean, when you're that piece, that's kind of nice.
Right, Rookie of the Year, All-Star, or MVP, couple of Gold Gloves to his name, perennial All-Star.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 6 All-Star trips, six All-Star trips for V-Mart, 2 Silver Sluggers, finished second in the MVP in 2014, hit 335 that year. 2014 finished just behind some guy who continually ends up being in that conversation named Mike Trout.
And they're not going to be too far off. I'm sure if you talk to Buster Posey right now, he'd say that if in 6 years from now, if he decided to retire, having a career 295 batting average, which is where Victor Martinez is at, which is nothing to scoff at.
No.
Is right around where he'd want to be. He's at a 306 now. We all see the decline. We all see him turning into a guy who doesn't hit for – well, he's never really hit for power, but a guy who hits the ball, gets on base, always has gotten on base quite a bit, but the slugging numbers are coming down. But you got to figure if he can – if you have Buster Posey, if he finished his career with a slash line at 295, 360, 455, and OPS at 815, if he'd be happy with that, who wouldn't?
Right.
I mean, those are good numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, Martinez is a guy who he was always kind of a year or two shy. He'd get to a team that either had just been to the World Series or left just before. Was on the Indians and the Tigers. They made it to the ALCS. Never made it all the way into the Fall Classic, but certainly a guy who, for his time in Detroit, I think will certainly find his way into their Ring of Honor in Detroit. I see you cocking your head. What?
Did they not make it to the World Series in 2012?
They did, but he wasn't there. He was out that year.
Oh, that's right. He got hurt.
Tore his ACL.
That's right. That's the year after he got there, right?
Yep. He got there in 2011. They made the ALCS, and he was out there. And you look at it. I mean, granted, the Giants swept him, but you wonder what something like that could have done. I mean, how it could have changed something. And it's one of those things you'll never know. But it's one little thing can change a lot.
Yeah. All right.
So let's go through the standings real quick. Not that at this point everything is pretty much tightened up. And this will be kind of an enjoyable conversation next week. John Smoltz, I think either did an interview or wrote an article about kind of how baseball needs to change. And one of his things obviously was the shift. But one of the big complaints is how it feels like that the baseball season is over so quickly. And we are at that point now where, yes, everything kind of ironed itself out, and everything is just about laid out for us. The Red Sox have won the AL East. What a surprise. 105 wins, 50 losses. If they win out, they will end with 112 wins either way. The best team in baseball by far. You expect the Yankees to win at least 5 of their next they have what I think they have 8 games, I believe.
Yeah.
If I'm looking right. So you expect them to win 5 of 8. They'll make the century mark. Man, the Rays got stuck. In a year they weren't supposed to do a damn thing. They finished 86-68. They are as good, or if not better, than several division leaders. They're a half game behind where the Braves are, who won the NL East. They're a half game better than the Dodgers, who were over the West. They had the same record as the Indians, who won the Central. They were a product of just a division that was stupidly strong. And it's hilarious, and we'll discuss this, obviously, when we go through our, where we think the end-of-year awards are going to be. How we both thought, well, they might as well move this guy and move that guy because no one's going to compete in that division. It's going to be a question of 2 teams, and that's it. Well, yes, it was a question of 2 teams, and that's it. But, damn it, we did not think the Rays were going to be this good, and a huge, huge tip of the cap to that ball. I mean, a really, really impressive job of managing by Kevin Cash. They are unfortunately eliminated from contention just because of the aforementioned 2 teams above them. The Blue Jays and the Orioles rounded out. We'll have 2 100-game losers. That'll be the Orioles and the Royals at the end of the Central. The Indians have wrapped up that division. The Twins, Tigers, White Sox, everybody else eliminated.
We could have a third. The White Sox do still have 7 games left, or 9 games left, and
okay, yeah,
93 losses. So
that's true.
Holding out, and the Tigers too. I mean, the Tigers very well could lose 7 more too. So holding out for possible 100 game losers. I don't want to say no until
it happens. Of course, the Astros have wrapped up a playoff spot. The division's still up for grabs. The X next to their name, but the A's are 3.5 games back. Their elimination number is 5 as far as being able to jump on there. But, I mean, we've seen the Astros have certainly tightened up. They're 7-3 in their last 10. The A's 6-4. That is going to be a lot of fun to see down the stretch. The Mariners, the Angels, and the Rangers will round out the bottom 3 in that order.
Speaking of the A's, I'm going to give you my first crazy stat of the day right now.
Oh, Lordy.
On Thursday, the A's beat the Los Angeles Angels 21-3 at Oakland Coliseum.
Sounds like a football score.
That is the first 21-3 victory in Oakland Coliseum history, to include the 46 years that they have hosted the Oakland Raiders football team. Ouch.
Hey, just win, baby. Just win as long as you don't score 3 touchdowns and get a field goal. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. Flipping around to the National League. Hey, man, I feel vindicated now because I got pretty much stomped and embarrassed when we hit the Midsummer Classic and the All-Star game. You had the Phillies. I went ahead and I thought the Braves would get it figured out. They did. They have secured that division. They're 8.5 games up on the Phils. The NL East is decided. The Braves will win their 87-68. Phillies.
I also feel vindicated.
Marlins.
I feel vindicated for both of us because when that was a 3-game division between those top three teams, you and I both said, no, the Nationals are already out.
Yep.
And now they're 9 games back, and they're what 11 games out of 8 out of the wild card.
8 out of the wild card. Yep.
Yeah. The national season is over. They should have traded Bryce Harper when they had the opportunity.
I agree.
But hey, what do I know?
The Chicago Cubs sit on top of the Central. That's going to be a fun division because the Brewers have to face St. Louis, and the Cubs end the season against the Cardinals. The Cardinals, right now, are looking at 3 teams from the Central making the playoffs, a la last year out of the West. What a bleeping shock. It's kind of ironic now how the wild card is shaping up to kind of give us that funky kind of, 3 teams from the same division surprise kind of deal. Even better on this, if things do hold pat as they stand now, the winner of that wild card game would play the Cubs as the best record currently in the National League. So we would have basically 2 interdivisional matchups from the wild card and the divisional round before we see what happens in the NLCS, which is good for the National League because something has to draw interest to them from the fireworks that we expect to see through the American League playoffs the entire time.
The only team that can play spoiler to that is the Colorado Rockies, who are a game and a half out of the wild card. But they're the only team in the National League in contention right now. Otherwise, the National League it's set.
Right. The Brewers and the Cardinals duking it out. There's a 2-game lead by Milwaukee over St. Louis for home field. The Pirates, hey man,
the Cardinals are going to pick a game up today. They're beating the Giants 6-0 right now. So
okay. The Pirates should have a chance to go ahead and finish at least 500. They're 4 games, 4 wins away from at least having a 500 season. The Reds, 66-91. It's not the worst thing in the world for them from where they started. That they at least looked competitive, and it seemed like a team that at least, even as rough as it was, enjoyed playing. Just to go ahead and get this out there, the Rockies face the Diamondbacks tonight. That is currently scoreless. That game just started. They are in Phoenix. They go to Philadelphia. They have Philadelphia at home, and they get the Nationals at home. So they're going to end up playing. Ooh, that's a rough one. They'll play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, I'm just doing the math real quick. They'll play about 10 games, I believe, straight. Yeah, 10 games straight from the 21st all the way to the 30th. But they host the Phillies and the Nationals at home. So Phillies are probably the one team kind of ticked off, could have a chance to screw some things up because they probably feel like they had a good chance to make the playoffs and didn't. Having the Nationals there could be a good thing for the Rockies. We'll keep eyes on that. Finishing out the West, as you mentioned, man, the Dodgers sit on top right now. That's who I believe I said. I said the Dodgers. You picked the Diamondbacks, I think, to go ahead and win that division. The wheels came off. Not really sure what happened there. It just everything got really wonky for them. They're 2-8 in their last 10. Dodgers with a 1.5 lead. A loss today. The Diamondbacks are eliminated. The Rockies sit a 1.5 behind the Dodgers and a 1.5 out of the wild card. So really, that 1.5 is more important towards LA than anything else right now. It gives them a chance to have some games at home. The Giants and the Padres round out the bottom of a dismal National League West this year.
Right, and one of the things that's sort of upsetting about what's going on in the National League West is the division was so good last year.
Yeah,
it was so much fun to watch, and I don't know what happened. Like, not just you would think that the Dodgers have to win this division after picking up Manny Machado, right? Like, when your brain hears the Dodgers, who are already such a talent-laden team, pick up Manny Machado mid-season, you think, oh, well, that's a no-brainer. But they are still playing .500 baseball. They have languished in this division for the last 6 years, with the exception of last year, or was it the exception of 2016?
Yeah. Well, they went to the World Series last year.
Oh, last year. Well,
and then against,
did they win the 97 games or whatever last year?
Believe so.
With the exception of last year, they've languished in this division, picking up division wins, playing .500 baseball.
Yeah,
and I think that's more indicative of what the National League West has been for the last, with the exception of the Giants' 3 World Series wins. That's indicative of what the National League West has been for the last 10 years.
Yeah, last year was 104 wins, 91 wins in 2016. Going back to 2015, they had 92 wins. 2014, just to kind of give us a little bit of substance here, I'll end it at that point. 94 wins in 2014. I mean, see the difficulty here, and I can almost kind of feel the proverbial the eyebrow raise from everybody listening. And again, guys, thanks for hanging out with us here on Out of Left Field. Be sure to check out thegruelingtruth.net, who always bring us to you guys every week. And also go to our Facebook page, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, at OO Left Field on Twitter. Real quick before we move on, I just want to say one thing. Everyone looks at baseball as being kind of that sport where not a lot of people follow it. We get a ranking every week from the Grueling Truth Network and our owners, producers, everybody there. You guys have consistently put us in the top 10 or top 15 podcasts on that network for the last year and a half, almost since we began. And we have added a lot more football, baseball shows. A lot of them are individually, based around certain teams. But thank you guys for just always supporting us and doing that. We always appreciate it. It does mean a lot to us, because if you didn't, we may end up like Jeff Banister and get fired. Rangers announced on Friday that they did relieve Jeff Banister of his duties. Man, this is rough for a guy who, for a while, I mean, that ball club looked really, really good. And it just never materialized. Obviously, you get the fight between them and Toronto. There was the huge Brooklyn Odor contract, which kind of makes me laugh because there's always this, he mismanaged talent. Did he really mismanage talent that much, or is it one of those things where you gave a bunch of money to guys who showed flashes of brilliance and have just dropped off?
Well, so my issue is not so much with how he managed the team that he was given. It's how the general manager put together that team.
Agreed.
Because for years, we're talking about these guys with the Texas Rangers had the number one pipeline team in baseball, and nothing. So I can't say that. I guess it's a combination of, did Jeff Banister manage that team well? No. Did Jeff Banister manage that team, mismanage the talent on that team? No. He just wasn't a good manager.
At least to a point when, when Josh Hamilton left back in, was it 2013, 2014, they were dismal. And obviously you had lost Ron Washington, due to the whole Devil's Dandruff issue and everything else. And then, of course, you bring him back. They made the decision to acquire Prince Fielder, which then led to Fielder's early retirement. But they won that division 2 years in a row with, 90-plus wins, and all of a sudden it just fell apart. He was a manager of the year in 2015, consecutive AL Division Series in 15 and 16, but then all of a sudden everything just completely fell apart. And things just didn't look right. Nothing they did, even getting the Cole Hamels deal. Hamels never really seemed as comfortable there. He pitched well, but certainly, kind of frustrating there. And it looks like the possibility Don Wakamatsu may end up being a candidate to take over the club full time next year. I think he's filling in for him now for the next 10 games or so. But it looks like he may be a guy who's interested in and obviously taking over the helm of the Rangers from this point on. But this whole story brings up a pretty, I think, interesting point for us is right now, how many teams do we think are going to have managerial vacancies after the end of the month, right? Because the season ends pretty much on the 30th. And you and I came up with 6 teams that we truly think could have vacancies. Out of those 6 or whatever, probably 4 or 5, I think, for sure. The Rangers obviously already have one. The Baltimore Orioles, I have been saying this for 4 or 5 months, man. Now there's reports coming out that it is almost a 100% final answer here that Buck Showalter will no longer be the skipper of the O's.
Right, and 110 losses, man. I get it. It's not all Showalter's fault, but
what sucks is he will probably be remembered out of his entire tenure there for the Zach Britton incident, which is I think massively unfair for how good that team actually could be, but that is likely what he will be remembered for.
Right, and as we've seen in the years since then, that there's no guarantee that putting your closer in that situation is going to have a positive outcome anyway.
Right.
So should he have put Zach Britton in? Who cares, right? Buck Showalter's a great manager. Now, he's not had a great year this year.
He said nothing to work with either. That starting rotation from Gosman and everybody, and was it Chris? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there was so much promise in that ball club a couple of years ago, and then that rotation absolutely just went into the trash heap.
Right. And I think Buck Showalter is going to benefit from leaving now. I don't know that Buck Showalter goes ahead and necessarily moves on to another team. Do you think Buck Showalter's managerial career is over at this point?
I don't think it's over, but I think you'll see him back at ESPN, where he was for a pretty good chunk of time. Because there was also questions of, well, what about Terry Francona and everything that happened? He went to ESPN, for a year or two, was in the Sunday night booth, and then ended up back in Cleveland. I think you'll see him back. I think you'll see him back as an analyst before he goes back into the possibility of managing.
Yeah, I agree, but it'll be good for him, I think, to leave that atmosphere. He's
an old school, hard-nosed manager, and a rebuild is not, I don't think, for him.
No, and he's been scapegoated in this entire situation, I think, because, like I said, this is definitely not all Buck Showalter's fault. There is a serious lack of ability to play the game on that team right now.
Agreed.
So, and guys like Adam Jones are suffering along with him, I think.
Yeah, for now. And that was an interesting. Obviously, if you get a chance, he finally expounded upon why he vetoed a trade to the Phillies. It was really well put by him. More of a long-term decision by him than a short-term one. And at the end of the day, had he gone to Philly or stayed in Baltimore, he's going to be in the same spot October 1st. Another team, the Kansas City Royals, man, Ned Yost. Talk about a fall, right? You go to back-to-back World Series. You lose in 14 in a heartbreaker in Game 7. Probably, you lose Game 7 with a man on third. In a game that likely was the defining game of someone's career. And unfortunately, it wasn't the defining game of a guy on your team.
Right.
The Mad Bum Game 7 that just, changed it changed the understanding of what a pitcher could do on short rest. Or granted, it broke the mold of what most pitchers are able to do on short rest.
Right.
Then you win the World Series next year against the Mets. It was strong. They were the favorite coming back into it. Oddly enough, played the Mets to open the next year when they raised the banner, which is just, that's pouring salt in a wound. And it just fell apart. Never were the same. They never really seemed to get back into it. I think Ned Yost has to be. I think he will be fired, unfortunately, and they will look for a new voice there in Kansas City.
Well, it's time for Kansas City to commit to a rebuild, in my opinion.
Which finally moving on from Moustakas was that was the one thing they were holding on to.
Right.
It was time. All those pieces are gone.
I don't think Mike Scioscia's leaving, despite the reports. I think the LA Angels are going to have Mike Scioscia for another year, whether you like him or hate him. And I know that the sentiment for a lot of fans in Los Angeles or in Anaheim, I'm sorry, I can't call him Los Angeles. It annoys me. The sentiment for a lot of fans in Anaheim right now is that they don't want Mike Scioscia to stay. They were excited when this report came out. Finding out that report may have been false sort of dashed some fan hopes in Anaheim. But I don't see Mike Scioscia going anywhere. Probably not this year, maybe even not even next year.
And if he does go, the question becomes, who do they go with? Because that's not a team where a Joe Girardi can come in. You have Trout, you have guys who are very, I think for the most part, very personable. And sure, Girardi has experience managing guys like Masahiro Tanaka. I think even managing or playing with Hideki Matsui. But at the end of the day, I think it would be a younger, more team-friendly, team-centric kind of voice that came in there. Could even be maybe a guy like a Freddie Gonzalez, a Ron Washington. Remember how excited he would get, on the steps, waving his arm like he's a third base coach, which he currently is for Atlanta. He was such a player's skipper. And if they did make that move, that would be to me an interesting one.
What about Sandy Alomar?
he has been passed over so many times. It's you hear so many good things about him, and I'm not questioning.
He's a bench coach for Terry Francona right now,
right? And it has been, just in the wings, waiting for a while. I don't know what his managerial style would be, which is why I think I leaned more towards the idea of Ron Washington. But yeah, I mean, I think he fits somewhere. But to me, sometimes when you're a guy who hasn't had a chance to really, you haven't earned your medal yet, do you put those guys in a situation that is going to at least require them to deal with some adversity just to see what you get? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The New York Mets, I don't think Mickey Callaway will go this year. I think they're going to give him a chance, at least one more year, to see what he actually is. He is supposed to kind of be a pitching whisperer. I mean, we saw what Jacob deGrom did this year. If deGrom attributes any of that to discussions with the pitching coach and things that he got from Mickey Callaway, that to me in and of itself is a reason to go ahead and keep him. They started off really well. They still don't have a ton of pieces. We didn't expect them to do that much. I think that is a good enough reason to go, hey, we got to give him a shot. Jim Riggleman is projected to, or at least is reported, I should say, as a favorite for the Reds managerial job. The owner, a big fan of what he has seen. And a team that, man, as dismal as that season began, they played spoiler to a couple of teams midway through the year, but they looked like they had a ton of fun.
Yeah. And that's important. I know wins and losses and World Series and yada, 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 but let's not forget that these guys are out there playing a game. And that if you can't have fun while you're playing the game, then you're not going to win baseball games.
Right.
It's not fun to lose, but it's less fun to lose when you have a bad atmosphere.
Right. And if you ask guys that play for the Patriots, sometimes it isn't even fun to win.
Right. I mean, oh, God. What was it? 3 days after the Super Bowl, he had him out there doing OTAs?
Something, I don't know. It was something
ridiculous like that.
I mean, it was just a different atmosphere. But here's the one I think that draws, and I held off because I want to end on this. Because really, we want your guys' opinion. I mean, you guys are out there. You're the fans. You're in those teams. You're focused on them. Tell us, number one, who do you think should go? Should your guy go? Should your guy stay? If you have an idea, who should fill in? But if you're a Nationals fan, that's the guys that we're really curious about right now. Does Dave Martinez stay? He has been a staple on the bench for Joe Madden. He was there in Tampa. He was there in Chicago. He finally gets a chance to go to Washington, and holy crap. I don't know, man. All of a sudden, I think honestly that moment, the silence kind of, what happened?
I don't know, man. I've really got nothing for you right now. Like, I don't know. We've seen falls and collapses and, well, I mean,
we're having the discussion about Dave Martinez that we thought we would be having about Gabe Kapler.
Right. Exactly. And the crazy thing is that we're talking about a team who went from a manager who could get them there but not get them there. You know what I mean? And that's sort of been his MO his entire career.
Right. That's what Dusty is known for. He's kind of Dusty was always the bridge to the guy who took you to the World Series.
But unfortunately for the Nationals this year, it just wasn't that way. They went with Martinez, who you and I both thought was probably a good idea.
I like the hire. I thought a young guy who would actually have, I thought would be good.
But Bryce Harper's not the baseball player people think he is. He just isn't.
Agreed.
Right. Murph's a great baseball player, but there's no Murph there anymore. Right. You got
Strasburg's a guy that you can't rely on because he seems to always be hurt.
Right.
You're not getting a full healthy season from him.
Other guys in their rotation like Tanner Roark, he's a great pitcher, but he's also inconsistent.
Gio Gonzalez.
You basically, Gio Gonzalez, another inconsistent guy. You basically got one guy in that rotation that you can depend on start after start after start, and that's just because he's an old school workhorse.
Yeah, you have Scherzer. You have out of the three names there currently between Zimmerman, Harper, I would say Rendon. I think Anthony Rendon is probably right now the most consistent piece you have now that Murph is gone.
Yep. And Zim was a great guy to have hit after Harper because you couldn't pitch around Harper to get to Zim. But I don't know, man. I don't understand how the Washington Nationals went from perennially winning that division and to where they are now. Except the only explanation that I can offer is that the Braves, the Mets, the Marlins, they're terrible.
I mean, at the time, the Braves now, obviously, Braves
now they are. I'm saying, does this explain, does those teams not being good?
I got you.
Perennial wins in the National League East for the Washington Nationals, and Dusty Baker just happened to be able to manage them into that spot? Or have the players and the coaches really are they really not the ball players and coaches that they were 2 or 3?
I think it was a year of lackluster talent and lackluster performance. I don't, because when those guys are on.
What a terrible idea for Bryce Harper in his free agent year. The year he's going to go into free agency, he's going to perform like this guy hit, 260?
Yeah.
Did he even hit 260?
Well, we saw how, Zimmerman last year, right? Zimmerman was one of the guys that we argued about for MVP.
Right.
I had said Votto, no, I think Zimmerman's maybe got numbers similar to Votto on a winning team. He didn't. It's just these guys that have these huge years and then you hope it carries over, and it just didn't.
Bryce Harper's hitting 245 right now. 245. What? Yeah. Guy, you're going into your free agency year, the year that you were supposed to be offered a $500 million contract. This is the numbers that you produce. But like we've said on the show before, that's sort of who Bryce Harper is, right?
Yeah. There's a point where you got to stop. Yeah. There's a point where you got to stop talking about what Bryce Harper can be and accept what you see that Bryce Harper is.
Right.
And I would say, I think it's one thing that we have said for a while, that MVP year was kind of like Cam Newton. Hey, man, it was great. That's not really Cam. That wasn't really Bryce. That was a year Bryce was just like, man, I'm seeing the ball. This is great, But then all of a sudden, okay, well, let's they adjust to him. They start finding the holes in the swing. They start throwing those down and in, breaking balls, getting them swinging over the top. It's just not. The holes in Bryce Harper's game are so big. It's like everyone knows that the hole in Mike Trout's game is hard up and in, and he has a hard time connecting, and that's what pitchers do. You just can't do it every time, and then he makes you pay elsewhere. Right now, they have been able to attack Bryce Harper, the holes in his game, and it's appeared to be multiple holes in his game, plus the frustration that he has just as a player, the kind of personality that he has. And to me, that's an equation for a really poor overall performer consistently, because so many outside things influence him. The way that guys attack him, the holes in his game that he hasn't been able to adjust to or close up, and then just his personality as a whole. It makes me really uncomfortable to consider signing him to a huge team.
Yeah, and I wouldn't give Bryce Harper that kind of money. Not ever. Not ever. And we've talked about that on the show before, but he's just not worth it.
I agree. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us, Chris. You got a baseball game to get to, which doesn't take an hour and a half drive, which has got to be awesome. And I heard your wife yelling at the dog, but I'll just say she's yelling at you because why wouldn't she? But, guys, again, thanks so much for hanging out with us. It's been a lot of fun. We got a lot of stuff to get to. Get ready. Our end-of-the-year awards predictions will come to you where we think everything's going to go. Obviously, we'll start talking about what the wild card games are going to be, what we think is going to happen.
And we got the post
series, and all the way through one of the best things in sports, which is fall baseball. I still have to argue that I think Stanley Cup hockey is one of the best things ever to watch. But fall baseball is right up there as the number 2.
I'm sorry. You mumbled something stupid, and then you said something about baseball that was probably right.
Hey, come on, man. You and I get that the Coyotes are never, ever going to probably make the Stanley Cup Finals, but
not a Coyotes fan, man. I'm from the Bay Area. I'm a Sharks fan.
Hey, that's not too shabby, finally.
It was fun watching them a couple years ago.
Yeah,
but
there really is very little there's not a lot better than playoff hockey. There really, I mean, it is probably one of my
emotional
to watch. Yeah, along. I mean, I will stay up till 1 a.m. and watch playoff hockey. Same as I would do stay up watching the World Series. Unless we go 15 innings like we did last year, and I had to work at 4 a.m. Sometimes, you know what, we had to make sacrifices, and I know you'll say my sacrifice should have been sleep, but yeah, driving a work van around, you kind of don't want to fall asleep driving.
You can sleep when you die, or you can die when you sleep.
which likely could have been the same thing had I stayed up. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us. Always had a blast talking baseball with y'all. Let us know what you think. Let us know about your managerial candidate. Should your guy stay? Should your guy go? Why? And if so, who's going to replace him? At OO Left Field on Twitter. Out of Left Field, Chris and Graham on Facebook. Drop us a tweet. Send us a message. Tweet us directly at Graham_OOLF, at Chris_OOLF. And, of course, you can always tweet at Grueling Truth on Twitter, and they will get all that stuff to us as well. For everyone here at the Grueling Truth Network, for Chris, I'm Graham. Thanks for hanging out, guys. See you next week here on Out of Left Field.